Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered, oh my goodness, if I could speak correctly? I have for sure. How to embrace your shadow side. Maybe that was my shadow side
Maybe.
just coming out.
Here we
Here
go.
we go. Well, my lips are still waking up. They're a little bit behind. Can't even talk straight. We can't stream live to Facebook. So, hey, good morning, YouTube.
Yeah, good morning. I have no idea what's going on, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I'm Ryan Morris. This is Nick Smith. He's the
Yep.
best. If you haven't joined our tribe of giants, come to Facebook and join the tribe of giants. It's a great group. And when we can stream to it, it's even better. We'll
Yeah.
get there at some point. And if you haven't subscribed or liked us on uh, on YouTube, then go ahead and do that. Ding the bell, as Nick says.
Ding, ding the bell so you get the notifications.
Yeah, you got to get those
Ding, ding.
notifications.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that I'm missing, Nick?
No, I don't think so at this time. So,
Oh, good.
yeah,
Will
we're
you
excited.
introduce our guest?
I'd love to. We got Amanda Monk with us, and she's a transformational coach and leadership consultant. She's been doing it for about 20 years in corporate America. Or, well, less than that, right? You were in corporate America for 20 years and left that. And I know that was pretty recent, actually. She does emotional clearing, Reiki. She's an intuitive medium, and she's training as an erotic blueprint coach. So her coaching experience began as coaching leaders in corporate settings and expanded as her spiritual practice became a significant part of her career focus. She's phenomenal. I've coached with her. I think, Ryan, have you?
I have not
Not
yet.
yet. Not yet. I love the not yet.
As of today, I
Yeah.
will have.
Well, the beauty of Amanda is that she will explore into the shadow side. You know, Carl Jung talks about the shadow self, and we all have it. Philip Zimbardo and his work talks about it, and really embracing that is important. And man, relevant for us in our business this week, and just a lot of things that tie into what you do. And so we're glad to have you on the show.
So excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to kind of go back in time with you to kind of explore your pathway, your journey. It's probably been an eventful journey, I would imagine.
Yeah, definitely.
Where do you want to start at? Where do you want, if we go back in time to where your journey kind of awakened or began, where would that be for you? It could be in childhood. We can start somewhere else.
Well, the short version of the childhood was, I've always been a seeker. I've always been willing to go and check it out for myself. So I wasn't raised, my family wasn't particularly religious, but I used to take myself to church from when I was in basically kindergarten until 8th grade. The church was down the street. I'd walk myself to Sunday school. I'd go to Awanas. I did a lot of just wanted to learn. I wanted to know more about everything I couldn't see, but I could feel. And, always had some intuitive abilities, but didn't understand it, didn't know what to do with it. Just wanted to know more and wanted to get answers.
Yeah.
And so that was just kind of a theme for me all the way through my childhood into, teenage years, young adulthood. We moved around a lot. And so I think it was something too that kind of allowed me to have some consistency, is to have some kind of faith through some of the harder times that my family went through. I think though some of my biggest awakenings, or things that really put me onto a particular path, were when I realized things that I had believed to be true or had put on a pedestal and they fell off, or I realized, oh, that's actually maybe not the whole truth. And those were usually pretty dramatic for me. When I was younger, it was like, since I was so attached to there being a truth, when I realized it wasn't the truth, it was, pretty devastating for me. And so I went through I think the biggest steering point for me, or like turning point, I was actually just about graduating college. And I had moved from a little town in Idaho to Phoenix, Arizona, where I went to school. And I, had this big shift of small town to really big metropolitan area, and still leaned into religion to find a community, and ended up asking a lot of questions of that particular religious community, and got answers that didn't make sense to me, or was kind of given some circular logic.
Yeah.
And it really shifted me. It really shifted me to go. And that was, I think, where, when we talk about getting into shadow, it was the first time I was willing to go and check out everything that was taboo. Like everything that I was told you're not supposed to learn about. That's bad, that's dark, that's evil. I was like, okay, I'm ready to go figure it out. I want to go see for myself. I want to decide for myself what is, what is Taoism? What is magic? What is Wicca? What are these tarot card things? And these were all things I was taught are bad, right? Not by my family, but by the religious institutions that I had been in, all the dogma that was there. And so it was me, I think, on one hand, I mean, gosh, how old was I then? Like 20, about 20, not quite 21 when I was graduating college. So I think I was also just finally had the courage and enough attitude, enough desire to be rebellious to say, let's go see. Like, let me go check this out. I would spend hours in Barnes and Noble because I didn't have any money. So I couldn't go buy books, but I could go there and I could read them. And so I was just pouring over all of this information, just couldn't take it in quick enough, couldn't learn it fast enough. And still, some of it resonated and some of it didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that was really my first delve into shadow, I think.
I'm looking at the thread. There's a common thread that goes through your life. Like if this were the tapestry of your life, there's a post that I did about how there's threads that come in and we're able to pull in where we want for that tapestry. But the thread for you around really exploring the other side, right? The unseen, including the shadow side, right? It had always been there, but the shadow side kind of evolved as you aged, right? Mm-hmm. And so you got more curious, and then also experience. So you had some experiences where your questions weren't being answered, and so you had this drive to go seek those out, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, even the act of going to religion or going to church, it was supported by my family, but it was against the nature of my family to do it. And so even that was a little bit of a departure from what was happening in the norms with like how, with my parents, with my siblings. And so, willing to be kind of the outsider or the one to go first, I think is an important part of being willing to face your shadows, or even the shadows of other people.
Yeah. Wow. So being that outsider, because this is important right now. There's a lot of things that are, socially not quite accepted, right? And so being on the fringe of that, I can imagine that could feel like a lonely battle. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure.
Yeah. I don't know what comes up around that for you, but
I think the idea of what I can say now at this point in my life, right?
Yeah.
In hindsight, it was being willing to be misunderstood, and I know that now where I'm coming from now, that I think that's a really important component of leadership. I didn't understand that then. It was almost a martyr type of a thing at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think there's, like, looking back, I guess I haven't really seen that thread that you just pointed out. And there was, at the same time, going to things I was comfortable, like getting involved in religion when I was in college, was actually about sticking to a comfort zone.
Okay.
I was in this huge metropolitan area, having come from a town of just that, like the entire population was 300.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And so for me, it was it was me going back into something comfortable where there was clear definition, there was rules, there was a tight-knit community, and I knew I could rely on them if I needed something.
Right.
And so it was like I found a way to get a smaller community.
It shrinks your world, right? It brings it back in.
Safety. It was about emotional safety for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So it's like I think that's a big theme in my life too, which is kind of navigating between expansion and contraction. Going into things where I really expand and I try something new, and usually there's a lot of excitement around that. And then I kind of look around and realize I might be a lot out of my comfort zone, and then reach for something that feels a little more safe and contract a bit. Okay. So I think everybody experiences that at some level. I think it's just a rule of nature that we go through expansion.
That's actually a really cool construct that we could dive down a little bit, is that expansion and what would you call that? Not contraction. It's consolidating, right? Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're pulling back in, but you're not you're not going back to where you were. You're consolidating the new information so that it just brings it back in and solidifies it. We don't have the hat on. I'm loving the comments. I'm glad we got comments on here. I was a little nervous about that.
Me too. It's amazing.
Well, you think about that, part of capacity is being able to solidify some of the new things about your life. And so, it seems like a struggle. I'm in this right now, just in the thought process of how do you balance your shadow side with society or with culture or with, like religion or anything else, when there's this speaking of tolerance for these things. But it's still not there. Do you know what I mean? Like the reality is you still get shunned for some of these thoughts, or, whatever it might be. It could be a photo. It could be anything. So how do you balance that?
Oh, I don't know that there's a simple answer to that.
Yeah.
Honestly. We talked a little bit before we went live about the concept of alignment.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. And I think that is about having a lot of clarity as to who you are at your core, like your values, your deepest purpose, and then, how that extends into whether it's in an organization or a community, or, even for me, like as a coach, I'm constantly putting together ways to work with me or offers. And I have to make sure there's alignment with who I am as a person, as a coach, and the things I want to do for people. Because the moment I put something out there that isn't in alignment, either it ends up putting me in a position where I'm doing work I don't want to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or it just doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just doesn't work. And so we're in such an interesting time right now too, with so much polarization, so much strong opinions. And, the word I use for it is people are just in their triggers. They are really emotional.
That's a great way to say that. Yeah. Yep.
And so when you bump up against something that has a lot of emotional charge, I mean, that is even in yourself, because I think we can only ever own our stuff for ourselves, right? When you notice something for yourself that has a lot of emotional charge, you're onto something that has shadow. The flag immediately. When you have and this I feel like is something that's in kind of like the woo-woo world or the coaching world, we were triggered a lot. So it's like, okay, you're triggered, then you've got shadow there. There's healing that is showing up for you, and it's showing up as an emotional charge.
Well, even if we didn't go into the woo-woo world, right, on this, the idea that a trigger causes an emotional reaction in you that triggers beliefs, because beliefs are just a consolidation of emotions, basically tied to thoughts. And so they've gained mass. And so there are things that you're holding dear, whatever they are, that are tied to emotions. And so when you bump up against those emotions, it's maybe even some of your positive beliefs or useful beliefs and your unuseful ones that are going to show up. And so that's where the work could happen. Right?
I totally agree. So for me and where I am today versus where I was even in my corporate career, I no longer have separation between the phrase I just used, the woo-woo, the intuitive, the spiritual, the science, and the business. Like, to me, they are a giant, ever swirling Venn diagram.
Yeah. Okay.
And what you're describing with your beliefs, your limiting beliefs, I call them programs. So, are you familiar with Joe Dispenza? He's one of my favorites. So Joe Dispenza describes our conscious and our subconscious like an iceberg.
Okay.
The part that's floating above the water is your conscious mind. The part that's floating below the water is your subconscious. And it's typically a much larger part of the iceberg. And it's submerged under the water where we don't have access to it in our waking state typically.
Yep.
And then there's this line where the water sits, and that is your analytical mind.
And
that doesn't form until you're around 7 years old. So each human spends the first 7-ish years of their life not really being able to decide if something is good or bad, if it should be or not. It is literally just a sponge taking in how
just
do I
absorbed, right?
Need, right?
Yeah.
How do I get love? How do I get shelter? How do I get food? How do I get cared for? How am I socially accepted? What are the things I need to do? And so the environment that we're in during those years, it's very formative of the subconscious programs that are constantly running in us. And those, when we have awareness of them, when we become conscious of them, we can see them as beliefs or stories, but they are running under the surface, contributing to our choices and decisions 24/7. And when I talk about shadow work, like, this is one of the most important pieces of work that I do when I work with clients, when I work on myself, anybody, to get into what are the programs running. Like, if you think of yourself like a computer, right? We talk about our nervous system.
Right.
Anytime we keep utilizing a thought, a belief, or an emotion, we're reinforcing those nerves, those synapses, right? We're putting more myelin on them. We're building them as stronger, and they're going to continue to operate. When you have awareness that I've created this rut by continuing to operate in this particular shadow or belief, you have awareness of it. It's no longer in the bottom part of that iceberg. You now have awareness, so you're now conscious of it. And then you can make change. You can make a new choice.
Yeah.
And you can use tools, some of the tools I use, emotional resonance clearing, neuro-linguistic programming, to kind of snip the wires on that. But it's not even fully necessary to do that. Just having awareness and making new choices and being in constant observation of that shadow, of that story, and deciding you're not going to stick with it anymore, making a new choice, you're building a new neural pathway.
Yeah.
And the more you use that, the more you reinforce it, you strengthen it, you put more myelin on it, you now start to build a whole new road, a whole new way of thinking, a new belief, whatever words we want to use for it.
So what I'm hearing in this, and I've been doing a lot of study around this week, around pathways and changing behaviors and uprooting old systems, even becoming conscious of them, right? The shadow is kind of the underlying, the murky, the stuff we don't talk about, or even the stuff we don't even know about, right? That we just do. And so bringing it to the surface, if you're not prepared to handle it with proper tools, then it can overwhelm you, spin you down, it can spin you into a dark spot. And so one of the things I keep hearing, I'm trying to think, Lisa Barrett, I don't know. I think it's Feldman Barrett, who's a phenomenal brain researcher. She talks about emotions, and that's her primary focus. She talks about getting into the question of what, not why, right? When we look at why do I do this, then it really spirals us downward, versus the more empowering, what can I do to create, like you said, the new pathway? What can I do with this awareness of this old way to shift that somewhere else? What do you think as you hear that?
I love it. What I hear is, it's when we're asking why, we're coming from a place of needing to put a judgment on something. We're judging it. And that is the irony of that is the programming.
Yeah.
Right. And so instead, just moving into what, you're bypassing that point of, well, I need to judge this before I can move forward.
Right.
You're saying, let's move forward. So asking the why, I think the why is important, but Nick, you brought up a super important point, which is shadow work, going into all of these depths and the parts of us that we see as dark or unknown or scary, it can bring up a lot of things. It can bring up a lot of emotions. It can bring up a ton of self-judgment, and it can bring up emotions that are important but maybe uncomfortable, like anger, blame, sadness. And so, well, I think it's important that everybody at some point in their life, hopefully sooner than later, starts to face, uncover, and learn to embrace those shadows. Having the right people in place, having a system of support, being in a place where you are prepared to handle what comes up is important too. Now, sometimes that's a luxury, because sometimes we're pushed into this awareness due to circumstances or things that happen in our life. But the thing about shadow is a lot of people think they're supposed to do it on their own or alone because of the darkness of it. And that is not.
Yeah. What if people knew, right? Like if people knew me on the inside, the shame, right?
The judgment.
Yeah. Yep. And man, we have some people that I know personally that are phenomenal at sharing their work. And you talk about alignment, right? Like what are you aligning to? Like their message is really to own that shadow self and really step into it and really embrace it. Right. And I think it's powerful. And they lean on other people, but they're also that leaning for other people. They're that space where somebody can come and really talk to them about it. But then you look at alignment, and that's where there's a divergence a little bit, is maybe, that work is powerful, but it might not align with some other work. Right. And so how do you balance that so that you're not living in shame? You're not shaming people. You're not disowning them. You're holding tolerance for them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because our shame is unique to us.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily going to match the other person's shame. And sometimes it does. And we can find camaraderie or a sense of I'm not alone in that. How do you balance it?
Would it be platform, like really aligning? So I think alignment is a key in this, right? Aligning with the platform for that. Like, I don't want people to stop being themselves. I don't want them to stop doing what they do necessarily. And no, I don't. Like the truth is they get to be who they want to be in the world. Now finding platforms, because you had some suggestions earlier that I thought were beautiful, is have platforms for that. So that when somebody goes into that platform, they know what they're going into and they're aware of it and they're choosing into it, and there's space for that, and it's held and it's tolerated and it's honored, versus putting it out, broadly. And then there's not acceptance. Does that make, am I being clear?
I'm following.
Yeah.
I feel a few things about this. Like and it is feeling for me. It's not just thinking. We have a lot to learn as a society about consent and about honoring other people's space and opinions as theirs. At a large, I think a lot of the polarity that's happening right now is people taking on other people's opinions, emotions, reactions, and somehow personalizing them and making them either for or against their own.
Yeah.
And
wow.
It's so not about that. I mean, I practice mindfulness as often as possible. I try to meditate every day. And the truth is, I still live in a 3D world where I am taking my child to school. I am bumping up. I am road raging. I am swearing at the person that cut me off.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still in the 3D world, right? I see you guys.
I don't know which direction this goes, but I'll point right here.
Yeah. I think that, having awareness that we're just not we're not in a place where everybody can be totally tolerant. That's not what we live in right now. And all we can do is take care of ourselves in that, be responsible for ourselves. If everybody took an awareness, like there's a amazing book called The 4 Agreements.
Yeah.
It talks about nothing is about you. Do not personalize things. Don't take it personally. It's about you, actually. And how often are we bumping into something and making it about ourselves? We either make it about ourselves as though we misinterpret that somebody said something and it was about us.
Right.
But also taking things personally can be being over responsible for somebody else's outcome as well.
Right.
Right. And so, what you and I talked about a little bit earlier was it's so important that you find the equilibrium, because I don't think there's ever a total balance. It's
Right.
always going
Right.
to be coming back to center
Yeah.
of staying true to yourself, still being you, but also being aware of the environment you're in, the
Right.
people you're working with. Like, you have to meet the people where they're at. And if you're not willing to meet the people that you want to work with, or that in your community where they're at, if you're not willing to do that, then there's not alignment. Either
Okay.
you need to go in and align with a different community because that's your true self, or you need to find the part of you that wants to still work with that community and meet them where they're at as you show up there.
Yeah.
And that's
There's
what I do.
yeah. Well, honoring that, because I see alignment as important, not only in groups, but individually, in any relationship. Right. So I was divorced in 2019. And one of the things that came up around that was alignment. Like, it was mainly around alignment. The direction that both of us were going was different, right? So we weren't aligned anymore. It wasn't that she's a bad person, I'm a bad person. It wasn't any of that. That's where the judgments come in. It was a misalignment. And if you're unable to get back into alignment, then the best decision is to move in other directions, right?
Right.
And if you're able to get into alignment, come back and work together in a way that works for both of you in alignment, then you can go in one direction. And that goes with any kind of relationship, which would include a group.
Absolutely. Business
Yeah.
partnership.
Yep.
Could be a marriage. It could be, any relationship at all, any overlap of people.
Yeah.
And I think this applies too with people in their careers, with management, with
Yeah.
a team you're on.
The tendency, though, hold that thought, like anchor that in, because I want to capture that too. The tendency, though, is to tolerate in intolerance. Basically, it's to stay in the discomfort outside of tolerance, polarized with your view, but not moving away from the thing that doesn't align for you. Like, we'll stay in a job too long, even though it doesn't align for us to do that. Right.
Yeah.
I've stayed on jobs where it's like, I should have left that job years ago.
And that brings me back to like the concept of asking what or why. I
Yeah.
think
Okay.
time for each question.
Hmm.
If you are in a position where you are in deep suffering, whatever that is, whether it's a relationship, whether it's a job, asking what first, what can I do to change what else is possible here?
Yeah.
Is probably your best next move, because you can circle back to the why later.
Sure.
But if you're in a position where you're ready to change, have a experience of growth, then why might be the right question.
Yeah. Your purpose, right?
Right. Why am I having this experience? What is this teaching me? What's good about this that I'm not seeing? Right. We tend to,
Beautiful.
one of my favorite things to use is something called the drama triangle. I just lost who created it, but it's this concept where you're a victim at one point, you're a rescuer, or you're the aggressor. Put those in any points on this triangle, but we're constantly moving through them. And so we might create a situation where we're unhappy. If we notice we're unhappy, we want to be the victim of that.
Right.
And then we get tired of being the victim, and we maybe overswing and we become the aggressor, because that's the only way we can see out. Or we become the rescuer and we overstep to try to fix the situation.
Right.
We take responsibility for somebody else. So we are constantly moving through that. And that's one of the tools that you can use to get into the why. Like, what am I being in this situation?
Yeah. Wow.
Without judgment of it either, right? Because we're all playing in that. Thank you. Yes.
There we go.
So
as opposed to the crap man drama.
Yeah, you know what? The crap man.
Different.
I misspelled the first one.
Yeah.
So the first of all, coming at it from curiosity and not judgment. Like,
wow.
digging into your shadow, absolutely, you have to come from curiosity. If you're coming from judgment, it's going to be painful.
Okay, I want to hit on
all the reasons why.
You're hitting on something that's very valuable here. Let me write this down first, though.
Sure.
As I interrupt you.
That's okay.
And pause your thinking. Where are you coming from is who you're being, right? And that being is your perception, which your perception consists of your beliefs, right? So you create this philosophy, this way of being from your beliefs. I'm playing with this right now in a group that I'm training. But the thoughts, so the thoughts are just, there's 50,000 to 70,000 thoughts that come up every day for just about every human, right? Those, when they're tied to emotion, they start to gain mass, and then you create confirmation around those thoughts and emotions. You start to look in your environment, which anchors in your beliefs, right? And then those beliefs become your philosophy for life, which is who you're being. And then that being tied to action creates your reality or your identity as you experience it. And so where you're coming from goes back to your philosophy of life. You are coming from that space, right? So if you're in a space of judgment around how you were being, then it's really hard to shift that, because that judgment keeps you locked into that. It's that, what is it? Rumination. That rumination where you're stuck in a whirlpool basically and spinning in circles and not going anywhere. Whereas curiosity is the road to expansion. And so judgment is restrictive and curiosity is expansive. So when you're coming from that philosophy, whatever it was, and you're being a certain way, and instead of being judgmental about it, you open up to curiosity, you just opened that thing up. Yeah. So that now the energy that would have been boxed up and pent up and maybe like dynamite, now it just kind of dissipates into the air and you have possibility.
Yep. I think judgment is a tool.
Okay.
It's a tool, right? And we use it as a way of being. It's misused. Our brain is there as a computer to help us sort and sift. And
judgment as a way of being. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually have this as a sticky note I'm going to show you.
Yeah.
And I actually took this down from one of these sessions with someone else. I do not remember who, unfortunately. And it says, do I want to be judgment or do I want to be love? Right. And I took this down as something for myself. Like,
let me ask you real quick while you write it. You wrote it to be judgment or to be love, not be in judgment or be in love. Like there's a distinction there. So go ahead and continue, but I want you to touch on that.
Okay. No, I think I'm going to take what you just teed up, because where we are being, wherever we are, whatever we're allowing to be the predominant thing happening up here is what we're being. And so I can be making a judgment. It doesn't mean that's who I am at my core, but that's who I'm being at that moment. Is I'm showing up in judgment. I'm being judgment, where I can be love. If I just embody love instead, if I come with, for me personally, that means I'm coming at things with curiosity. And I'm coming at using judgment as a tool in my toolkit. It's important. I need to be able to assess. I need to be able to come to, with discernment, right? To keep myself, to manage my own boundaries, to keep myself safe, to have my own consent. However, just because I've come to a conclusion of where my boundary is, doesn't mean that I need to judge the other person if they don't meet my expectation, if they bump against that boundary. I don't need to make them wrong. I don't need to impart a judgment on them. I can still come from a place of love.
Yeah.
And like I've bumped into this a lot
unless I'm in traffic.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
I think that's one of the hardest parts to actually apply this, right? Do I want to be loved while I'm driving? No, I want to be fast. Actually.
Yeah.
I want to drive fast.
But that shows your commitment, right? What you're committed to is fast.
Yeah.
But I was thinking Byron Katie, right? Byron Katie was doing a session with somebody, and she said something along the lines of, you're judging the other person for not acting the role that you're playing in the movie in your own mind. Like you're judging them for the movie that you're playing. And so the judgments that we have of others, there can never really be a judgment of others. It's only a judgment of the thoughts that we're having and the perceptions that we're having.
Yeah.
And so that's where the movement comes. Oh, we got a technology freeze. So it's the
No.
best. We know we're moving in the right direction when technology freezes. So, here's a thought around that, is that our judgments kind of get in the way. And you froze there, so I don't know if you had something that you wanted to share. So let's maybe go back to that. Okay.
I do. I feel like when we talked about expansion and contraction,
Yeah.
judgment to me is contraction. Love is expansion.
Yeah. Okay. So
right?
Love is curious, right?
Love is, yeah, it is. And it's openness, it's vulnerability, right? I think that's one of the things that is so scary about it is Ricky Bobby, that's hilarious. Is that
you're hyper aware. I didn't even think you saw that, but
my only job here on the show is to distract and make
come
people
with the
laugh.
comments.
That's it.
Shake and bake.
Okay, shake and bake.
I don't know what to do with my hands.
Yeah.
Great movie. So when we are coming from this place of love, we're open.
Yeah.
And that means we're vulnerable. Right. And so when we're coming from a place of judgment, we get to put up a wall. We get to stand strong in our point of view, but we're not as vulnerable. We're not vulnerable there in judgment. And so one of my values is vulnerability. That is how I'm going to create connection. That is how I'm going to be able to help people. And it's how I'm going to grow.
Let me ask you something. Is neutrality a stance? If we're living in a polarized world, I'm going to just kind of jump into that. If we're living in a polarized world, is neutrality a position? Does that make sense? Or is it, because it's almost like we live in a world where there's zero tolerance. There feels like there's zero tolerance.
The neutrality as a position, oh man, I don't know. I'm going to have to think about that one for a minute.
Yeah. Switzerland.
Yeah.
I guess that is a position, right? Like that is a spot. That is a space of being.
In neutrality is really, that's like to master the Zen, right?
Yeah.
To come a true neutrality of zero judgment, of absolute zero judgment.
Okay, so I have a thought. This might, hang on to that. Like,
she's good at that, Nick.
We live into a universe that is mostly quote unquote empty space. And then you have positives and negatives that emerge out of that space. But the space is none of it.
Right.
It's the space for it. And the positive and negative occurs within that space. So living in the space of neutrality is almost in a position, to me, of tolerance for both the negative and the positive.
Right.
And we have, like, if I were a neutron and a proton, it would be like saying that only protons should exist.
Right.
And you're saying shadow is we need it all.
Yeah, we absolutely need it all. And there's this, to me, it brings me back to this concept of equilibrium or 0 point. Very few things will exist at that in its truest for more than, a split of a second.
Yeah.
Because this is where judgment is a tool. Like when we say positive or negative, my negative could be your positive.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's all that perception that's why we're constantly moving in and out of those states. We're moving in and out of neutral is the void, perhaps, right? And you can go there and you can stay there. It takes a lot of energy when you're first figuring out how to stay in neutral. And that's what I mean by, like, that's a very Zen place. It takes mastery. It takes practice.
I love
to stay in that space for very long.
I love what you said, because I disagree.
Good. Tell me more.
Yeah. So can you bring that one back up, Ryan? Neutral without thought. It's not without thought. It's tolerance for any thought. It's the space of any thought is okay to be present, right? Yeah. It's the attachment that moves us to one side or the other. And it's our description of what we think it is, our truth, right? That makes it useful or unuseful, positive or negative. The definitions that we give, good or bad, right or wrong, that's where we attach the judgment. And so, like when you say as a tool, the judgment as a tool, if you're judging something as a positive or negative, you can also judge it as something else.
Right.
So yeah, go ahead. I just keep
there's
throwing it over.
I mean, this is where, and I think this is a huge part of
Yeah.
about shadow, right? To get to a place where you can handle, where you have the capacity for digging into shadow, you have to have awareness of your own judgment, and you have to be willing to be either right or wrong in it, period.
Okay.
It's about acceptance. So noticing where, like when you talked about attachment to to a judgment or an outcome, it's right or wrong. The thing that was really mind-blowing for me when I was learning about this is that we tend to be more attached to things we've judged as right or good.
Yeah. Okay.
We get even more attached to those things than we do something being bad or wrong. Because once we think it's good, it's like we want to file that away and even identify with it. And the attachment's really strong. So when somebody challenges that might not be good or right, we can become very defensive of that because we filed it away in attachment to it. No, I've taken that on. That's good. I've already decided. Like we've already cleared that up. I get to file that away as good or right. So now you're deeply attached to that point of view.
Okay, so
release that point of view and be curious or come from a place of love and openness, right? The vulnerability of, wow, maybe I have to actually take that out of the right and good file and open it back up for evaluation. It's very vulnerable.
You are just like exploding my mind right now. Like I'm thinking of like things that the right or wrong, the good or the bad. It's we anchor these things in as truths. So we have an experience or a thought, and then we have an emotion tied to that, and we build mass and we make it a belief, and then we go look for confirmation of that belief in the world. We don't look for disagreement. Scientists try and look for disagreement, but even they're looking for confirmation for their theory, their hypothesis.
Proof.
Yeah, we look for proof. And then that proof anchors in our truth, whatever that truth is, because you could have a truth that for somebody else is very harmful, unuseful. But for you, you think it's useful. So you find confirmation for that truth and anchor it in even further that, yes, this is a truth. And then you start to feel like it's a global truth, like everybody should accept it.
Yeah.
When the reality is that doesn't happen. So holding space for the idea that your truth might be different from somebody else's truth.
Yep.
And your truth that you feel is useful could be unuseful.
We're so attached to certainty.
Yeah. Oh,
we
wow.
need it to be true so that we have something to grip onto. And the reality is we're floating around in this, galaxy on a rock that's spinning. Like there's so many things that are uncertain, not still, and not concrete. Even concrete is made up of more space than it is of actual matter, right?
Yeah.
So it's a big kind of, so I want to come back to something here. So, and this actually comes back to my journey a bit. So I went through this program, this process in 2019 that blew up most of the truths that I had about who I was and about a lot of them just about life. And it's a process called the spiral, and it's emotional resonance clearing. And it's 22 emotions that you go through. They're, the most common emotions. It's on the Hawkins scale of consciousness. You start from the bottom, the lowest, hurts, taking a step back. If you didn't know, emotions can be measured in hertz. There's actual frequency that comes off of emotions as we're experiencing them. Science has measured that. That's already something that we have as studied and documented. So when you begin with clearing these emotions from low resonance, the very base, from 20 hertz, which is shame, and you begin clearing all of your stories and subconscious programs about shame, then we move into guilt, then we move into dogma. We just keep going up and up and up to the last one is actually in the one that's cleared in this particular program is enlightenment. So you get from 20 to 1,000 hertz. And it was like a bunch of, you hear the concepts of like, let's peel the onion. This was like going into the center of the onion and exploding it. For every one of those emotions, the entire onion was blown up. everything that I thought I understood about shame or that I was ashamed of, the onion got exploded.
Mm.
My entire concept of what shame is, how I used it, how it was showing up in my life, where I was attached to it so that I could stay a victim or a rescuer, man, it was really life-changing for me. And I mean, I would love to spiral everybody. I think the entire world needs to go through this process just for the clarity that comes of it, just for the so facing, first of all, going in and facing that and realizing where I have shame, what my stories of shame were, what are the things I'm ashamed of, snipping the wires to that. So I was no longer subconscious, but now conscious of it. And then having to make new choices again and again and again, times that by 22 emotions over the, span of this process. I mean, I came out what I would say, I don't want to say a different person. I was more me than I'd ever been.
Okay.
I wasn't operating from a place of all the conditioning and programs of who I'm supposed to be, what I have to do to get by, who I need to be as a people pleaser. It shed so many layers for me. And I think that when we talk about alignment, like, and this is kind of where I'm going with that, you have to get crystal clear on who you are without all those programs before you really know what alignment is. Otherwise, you're aligning to what you learn to do to survive. You're aligning based on all of these subconscious programming that are running in you. You're not actually running on your core self. You're not aligning to your core self. So, and it's not that the spiral program is the only way to get to that work. There's a lot of ways to get to that, right? But that was the one that worked for me that I chose.
I've got a view around this that's coming up, just a vision of it, right? I think of a piston, and a piston works because it's enclosed. It's an enclosed system so that when there's an explosion, it pushes that piston out of the way because of the pressure. And with our ways of being, our judgments around things, it encloses us in so that we're encapsulated. And then that forward momentum is pushed forward by our belief system, our philosophy of life. And so we push it forward. But what this spiral offers is that it opens that system. Curiosity is the key to really opening up to where that piston loses power. And so instead of it being contracted and restricted to one view, and that pushes you forward in that momentum, whatever that is, the curiosity just takes all the walls away.
Yeah.
And now that piston can't move in a way until you come back to a new truth and then close that into a new piston in a way. It's like your behaviors, once you get curious about them, step out of shame, they kind of lose that energy, that mass, that movement.
Yeah. I mean, I had a client we went through the spiral, and she had told me, this was in level 1. So the first level, you clear shame, guilt, and dogma in a single session. It's pretty powerful. And she had this wake up call where she said, if I'm not operating from guilt, I don't know how to be. I've never not operated from guilt before. Every single thing I'm doing is either because I feel guilty or to avoid feeling guilty.
Right.
And when that opened up for her, it was like she had a whole new level of freedom. If you're not operating from guilt, you're operating from choice. You're operating from alignment. You're not running from that program anymore. What now is possible for you? It was life-changing. So to your point, it's like we took the cylinder and opened it up. Like, I don't know that you take away the cylinder that the piston's in. I think you just make it bigger.
Give it capacity.
Yeah, the capacity becomes so much bigger. And I mean, I'm personally thinking of that analogy from the explosion as impact, right? Impact to the world. And if you're a much bigger explosion,
I guess where I'm going with that is that if you have an unuseful behavior, let's say that, or an unuseful judgment, your way to really open that up is to explode the walls, basically, to really get curious. And curiosity is the destructor of walls and restriction. It opens up the possibilities. But like you said, if you have something that's useful, then make it bigger, make the capacity bigger, have a bigger impact. I like that.
I think there's something too. Curiosity is not the whole thing. There has to be acceptance.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
can be curious about it, but if you're still in judgment, you're just still beating yourself up.
Right.
And so you have to pair the curiosity with the willingness to accept whatever shows up.
Okay.
There's a book that I really love called Existential Kink.
Yep.
It's not about what you think it would be. It's about actually getting into all of those shadow pieces and exploring the secondary gain that they're creating. Because any behavior we have, whether it's positive or not positive for us, whether it's serving us or not, there's something we're getting out of it, or we wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, it's a great book.
Reinforcing our story. It's allowing us to hold on to what we've decided was a truth so that we don't have to change our mind about it. Or it's getting us something that we're afraid to ask for directly. So when we talk about acceptance, I love that book as a journey to that, because it really digs into what's hiding in there. And if we could just go in and actually just love it instead of being afraid of it or ashamed of it or seeing it as dark and ugly, then what is possible? Like, how much freedom do we have? It doesn't mean you're going to start dressing in all black and all of this.
Yeah.
Your shadow. In fact, I think it's actually when you uncover that is when more of your light shines. Like, that's when we become more effective, more radiant, more loving. When we are willing to go into the dark.
My kids just started a movie right here, right next to me. Give me 1 second. I love it. This is how life goes.
They start doing construction. They're remodeling all around you.
Yeah, this is the 3D world. This is how it is.
One of the things that came up for me right there is I look at the 12 journeys that we created for the giants and the smalls. We have a program called the 12 journeys that we teach in schools, and there's private programs. We do the Sum Gigante is another one. But in those 12 journeys, one is unconsciousness. The first journey is the journey of unconsciousness, because when you don't know what you don't know, there's nothing to do. Right. So you step into the journey of awareness, right? But then the journey of awareness goes into the journey of acceptance. So it's not just becoming aware, like you said, the curiosity. Now it's accepting that it is what it is and holding space for it. And then you go from the journey of acceptance to the journey of grief of what is not.
Right.
And which is forgiving the judgments also. Mm-hmm. And then you go into the journey of gratitude and then the journey of uncertainty. And so like the journey of grief, though, going back to that, the forgiving the judgments, like you're talking about, if you're stuck in the space of judgment, forgive those judgments.
Right.
And that would be your way out. Because go ahead.
Get curious about the judgment.
Yeah.
Oh, this makes me a bad person, or I shouldn't feel that way. That's curious. Why am I looking at it that way? For me, sometimes I've been dating, and that has brought in a whole new world of all of this for me. Getting curious about why I'm perceiving something in that way. Once I recognize the judgment, it's almost like training myself to see the judgment and recognize it as a little flag to say, oh, there's something there. What is that about? Am I judging myself? Am I judging the other person? What's behind that judgment? What am I not accepting about myself? Or what am I projecting on to this other person? That, we go back to what you said about Katie Byron's work. It's like my lens of what I thought it was supposed to be, my projections onto them, and then the judgment that comes from either disappointment or unmet expectations, or even expectations on myself, right? So I think people that I've talked to that come to me with questions about, like, what is shadow work? Like, well, it can be anything you make it. Like it can be something you get into when you look at your relationship with other people. It can be how you parent. You can dig into the shadows around, your significant relationships. Like if you're married, it can even be your relationship with food. Like everywhere you turn, there's going to be something there's always a rock to lift up. to explore more about yourself, to find some judgment under there that you can release and let go. I think that's part of just the human condition.
Yeah.
Like, we're literally what we're made to do while we're here.
Yeah. What was it, Ryan? There's that quote that says, when you don't measure up to the ideals of others, or perceived ideals of others, you experience anxiety. And when you don't measure up to the ideals that you have for yourself, you experience depression. And that was, I think, Lisa Feldman Barrett. And that's her whole focus, is the research around emotions and affect. Right. And how you show up emotionally, your mood affects who you're being, and that way of being is going to impact what you're doing, and that's going to create your reality. And so what I hear in your shadow work is this acceptance of all of you, every side of you, every aspect of you. Hold space so that you can actually transform it if you want to do that. You may not want to, you may want to keep that. And then it's just a matter of alignment, right? If that doesn't align in one area, then find an area where it does.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's that lens, the point of view we're coming at something with. If sometimes we're making something wrong when it doesn't need to be wrong.
Right.
And other times
wrong,
we're
right, wrong, right,
exactly.
Wrong, right.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Wrong. Yeah. No, keep going.
Left. So it really, I feel like it really is just a matter of like, this can take anybody. This can take people into really dark places. We talked about that in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that way. Like, it doesn't have to be. Shadow work is kind of trendy right now. Like, that word, the concept of it. It's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do some shadow work. So for the next year, I'm gonna be in a really weird place. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't have to go like that. You don't have to be
in a really weird place for a lot longer than a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be, this really dark, scary, shame-filled, depressive, painful experience. You're gonna see things you don't necessarily like. Like, that's part of it, right? The reality can be confronting. And taking it in small bits and little pieces at a time is recommended, because there are times where you won't get to do that way. Like, there are things that happen to us that are, I call them tower moments. And this goes back to me in my tarot reading. The tower is a card that comes up when lightning is striking and you don't really have a choice. It's happening. The thing is happening, and it's usually abrupt, difficult, and destructive. And there are moments like that force us into facing things. Those happen in life. And then there are other points where you get to just, be in discovery and choosing to dig into more about yourself, learning about yourself. When you're in a position where you're a leader, like both of you in this case with the Tribe of Giants, you're going to be faced by external things that force you into those moments. And then there are times where you as a leader are going to say, I'm ready to face this with myself because I want to show up differently.
It's interesting.
Sorry, Nick,
you go first, because I haven't heard from you. So
I've been managing lots of comments and trying to retype them onto YouTube. But so you're right. Like, there are times where you're not ready to face those things that are probably there deep down in your gut, your intuition, they're there, your way of being, your operating system, the things that have shaped your beliefs, and you maybe don't want to deal with them. But then there becomes a time where maybe that outside force, like you were talking about, that circumstance forces you to deal with it to grow, or not. If you don't want, if you might not get to grow if you don't face those things. For me, there was this moment where that happened, and then learning to. At first, I was mad at the way that I was, and that the way that I was taught, and the way that I was being. There was some little bit of shame, a little bit of anger, but then they started looking at it through a different lens and started to see that those experiences, those things, the good, the bad, whatever you want to call it, the light, the dark, all of that shaped to where I'm at right now, the crossroads in my life where I can look at it and then and face it, and then with the help of others be able to start a new operating system and see it from a different perspective. And I've also learned inside of that um, to love those parts and to forgive them.
Mm.
An emotion comes up like
Yeah.
as I'm speaking that. Um, a little bit sad that that's the way I was for a period of time, like my whole life, most of my life from about 7 on, right till I'm 40. Well, I was about 39 when I started diving into this and learning more about my operating system. And then um, inside of that grieving of letting go of my old operating system and who I was, finding the forgiveness and the love for that, and then learning the new tools to be able to move forward from that point. Cutting some of those. I call it, I was like doing this motion like, and Reiki, right? You cut off, right? You can cut things off, right? The it's almost like cutting cords.
Yep.
Yeah, take that, old self, and releasing those things and then coming from an alignment and a balance and a heartfelt space. Um, it's been a little bit new for me, and releasing and gratifying, and I mean, there's all these positive things that come from facing the shadows, the darkness, the hard things, um, and wishing deep inside that I would have done this so much sooner, you know. But giving that gratitude and love for the experiences, and now that I'm aware, I can dive in even deeper and find things that I'm not aware of, and learn how to grow from here and find new tools, new ways of being that can help you spiral up and become, uh, a better version of myself, a higher self.
Mm.
That's what I got.
I love it.
It's
And I
perfect.
missed like 40,000 comments now.
Yeah,
I'll be
yeah.
back.
Amanda,
What I
are you good
found,
on time too? And
yeah, I'm
yeah,
good on
okay.
time. Oh wow, that goes so fast, doesn't
It
it?
does. Yeah.
I just want to say thank you, Ryan, for sharing that. I feel like that's a beautiful description of exactly what shadow work is, and I can tell you that you referenced the spiral and spiraling up, and what I'm finding is things I thought I healed, I get to see again from a new
Mm.
level. And so that tool of forgiveness, of forgiving ourselves for accepting it, seeing the good in it, seeing how it's serving you or how it once served you and being able to move past it. We all get to do that again and again and again from a new point of view, from a higher perspective, from new knowledge, from new experience. You know, it's like when you are, yes, exactly, fractal work.
There you
Um,
go, Hugh.
when you are talking about that experience, it reminds me of tools and letting people help. Like, actually, we first to CrossFit and the environment around with and having to learn new things in my body, how to do movements, not even knowing how much weight to put on the bar, you know, and then even the pressures of, well, all these people know what they're doing and I'm the new girl. But getting through it, being uncomfortable at first, learning how to do it, recognizing where, you know, my level is, how much weight I can put on the bar, and building confidence in it. And eventually it was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing for, you know, this particular setup. I know exactly how to do this. I know I know exactly how poor I am at jump rope.
Yeah.
And being okay with it and knowing that I'm going to get better. And that environment that was really scary when I first went in it eventually became a place where I could go and just really get, again, vulnerable, because I'm not going to do this perfectly and I'm not going to be as good as some of the people around me. And eventually I might actually, be pretty decent at a lot of this and have a lot of comfort with it, until they introduce something new that I've never seen before, which, was like every week. But it's, we see these patterns of being uncomfortable, growing, learning, trying something new, asking for help, and facing whatever the fear is, whether it's who was I then, or what poor decision did I once make, or can I even do this? Am I as strong as the other people in the room? Whatever analogy you want to use. The more you do it, the more comfortable you become with the discomfort, and you know how much pain you can take. Like when I'm in the gym, I know where my limit is and how much strain I can put on myself before I'm not going to be able to bring that bar all the way up. Right? I've learned that edge for myself, and it's different for me than it is for the next person. So when anybody, like, I'll just leave it with this, like, if you are looking to really dig into some things, you've got to learn also your limits. You've got to learn to ask for help. You have to have a spotter. Like, get some help with it. Don't try to do any of this completely alone. You're already going to feel alone in a lot of it, just because it's your stuff. It's your shit. Like, it's your history. It's your darkness. Don't feel like you have to be alone in it, or that you need to come through the dark stuff with shame. There's nobody else. There's no way you're the only one who's experienced this thing. No matter how weird, taboo, dark, strange you think it is, there's no way you're the only person who's ever experienced that or felt that. So ask for help, lean on people, let people, bless you with support. Because really, if you are allowing people to help you, you're giving them the gift of allowing them to give and support you.
I just want to bring that quote up right there. The greatest illusion in the world is the illusion of separation, right? Yeah. Isolation, loneliness is a construct. It's within us, right? So there's somebody that can serve, and can be there as a tool to lean on, not a rescuer. That's a distinction, is they're not there to rescue you. They're there to lean on while you heal and grow and do that for yourself. Man, you've imparted some really helpful, useful wisdom here today. Is there anything else you want to share?
I'll just say this. This is the last thought that came up when you posted the illusion of separation. Like, as you are willing to share what your darkness was, you're giving somebody else permission to do the same. Right? And like, how much of a light is that? What a gift to give to somebody, to let, by sharing your own darkness, shining a light on it, being willing to share it, you just gave permission to everybody else who was afraid to do it.
Right. Man, that's kind of what our whole journey has been founded on, is sharing that darkness, right?
Right.
It's kind of the edginess of it. And now, how do you balance it? That was the whole question. How do you balance that and be in alignment with your audience, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's where we started today.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very personal decision, and you have to know where your center is.
Yeah. It's beautiful. Ryan, any other thoughts?
I've just been super appreciative of Amanda. She's been around us for a while, and for the energy and the wisdom and the love that I feel, my body, I'm feeling warm vibration all through the tips of my hands. I feel that from her. That's what, when I see Amanda comment, when I see her show up in somebody's life, when she comes on here and speaks with us, that's what I feel from her. It's a good, positive, loving, caring, considerate vibe, and I know that that she's a genuine person. That she really does care. She reached out to me going through some of my darkness, my shadow work, and just felt something, and reached out, and that meant the world.
I thought I was not going to cry today, Ryan. You're making
It's allergy. It's okay.
okay.
Isn't that time of year? I don't know. But it meant the world to me that you reached out, that you felt something, a rift in the force or something. You felt something, and if you feel that intuition for somebody, go with it, because you have no idea what it does. Even just a hey, how are you? Was thinking about you, love you. You don't have to know everything that's going on in their life, but if you feel that, just reaching out meant the world to me. And I don't know if you're 100% aware of that. I'm sure you probably are, because you're amazing. But I just wanted to tell you personally how much that meant to me. So thank you. I appreciate you. Love you. And I'm so grateful for your time this morning.
Thank you so much. Love you too.
That's awesome. So for those that are watching, continue to be giants, continue to do your work, work on the shadow side, embrace it, love it, accept it, align yourself with, other people that are doing similar things, find those, man, I don't even know what to say, tolerances, right? That capacity for that space, but keep doing the work, because the shadow work is vital for your growth as much as the light work. So embrace both. And as always, keep doing giant things, and we'll see you in the next video.
Love you too.